Bioshock, a game that teaches a deep and philosophical message about never trusting any vehicle given to you by an Irishman. You play as ex-British national Jonathan Bioorganic Electric Therapy, or John Bioshock for short, as your plane crashes just short of its destination, stranding you in the middle of nowhere. Thankfully, due to the parasitic unions wanting to keep their workers employed, a lighthouse has been built in the middle of the ocean for just such an occasion. The initial introduction after the crash was confusing for most gamers, as it required the player to enter something called a bath, a scenario of which none had prior experience in. Eventually, after figuring out the difficult puzzle, we are introduced to the city of Rapture after a short video from its founder, Andrew Ryan, who puts it rather simply: 8 pores, 8 commies, and 8 God, before choosing to build a laissez-faire capitalist city under the water. Andrew Ryan believes no government should control the people, and that anyone who has the brains, capital, or initiative should be able to succeed over those who have less. He is so strong in this conviction, he manages to stick to it for a whole 5 seconds after someone overtakes him. Anyway, we finally enter the city and are greeted by one of Rapture's upstanding crack addicts. But not all is perfect. As we saw on our journey into the city, it has begun to fall to ruin, and even worse, government oversight. As the crack addict charges you, a government drone intercedes in an attempt to scare the crack addict away, taking away his free market ability to stab you and take your belongings. This security bot, also known by its full designation, the Personal, Investigative, Governmental, Electronic Ornithopter Nanny, or Pigeon for short, was called by your new friend Atlas Paddy O'Sullivan, who is a rather well-mannered fellow. After searching around, we find a broken vending machine with a suspicious syringe containing an unknown liquid. Like all British people, our character immediately injects the needle without any hesitation. And like all needles filled with unknown liquids, grants him magical powers. Terms and conditions may apply. As we navigate the city, Atlas gives us a long, boring story about his wife and kids. So to spare you all from that, I will now talk about the city of Rapture. Rapture was founded by Andrew Ryan, a communist who didn't like being a communist. So he moved to America, where the American government asked if the forest he bought could be turned into a national park. Very reasonably, Andrew Ryan called them all tree-humping hippies and burned it to the ground, and later went on to found the city of Rapture, using his blood, sweat, and incredibly rare ability to hold builders under the water for extended periods of time. Rapture is an incredible city, sporting a wider range of options for the consumer, such as an American healthcare, or, if one prefers, Canadian healthcare.
So Doc, I think I've had this cough for a while now and
Hey buddy, we got just the procedure. But that's not the end. British dentistry, Russian cuisine, Mexican pharmaceuticals, and your right as a Rapturian to bear arms can all be yours and more by just boarding your nearest Malaysian airliner. Now back to the game. We are introduced to the main mechanic and morality choice of Bioshock, a little girl who is protected by 5 tons of steel wielding a big drill. After beating them to death with a wrench, you are met with a difficult choice. Save the little girl for 80 Adam, or kill her for double. Now, if you look further into this and compare the two, you actually only gain 40 Adam more by the end of the game if you kill the little girls. After finding out this information, it made the whole thing a lot easier because, I'm no child murderer. But 40 Adam is 40 Adam. Bioshock was also what helped spawn a new term in gaming: Ludo Narrative Dissonance. This is where the gameplay doesn't match up with the story. The best example of this is Grand Theft Auto 4, where you play as Niko Bellic, a Serbian man who fought in the Bosnian Wars. And like all Serbs, he's a war criminal. But unlike other Serbs, he has regrets about it. So much so, he moves to America to build a new life, where he subsequently is given to me, the player, who goes about causing mayhem and committing every single crime possible. Do you think Niko wishes to do these things? Of course, he's Serbian. But most of all, he wants to go bowling with his cousin. But I had already played Wii Sports Bowling, the pinnacle of all bowling games, and wasn't about to waste my time with an inferior spin-off, hence the dissonance in the Ludo narrative. Anyway, back to the review. So, spoiler for the game in case you hadn't played it in the 16 years before this review. Atlas, your good Irish friend, is in fact a gangster called Frank Fontaine, who's used you since you arrived with a sob story about his wife and kid, to lead you to Andrew Ryan. It turns out Ryan is actually your dad, and Frank Fontaine used a 1939 to 1945 German scientist to grow you from an embryo, and indoctrinate you with mind control to make you do unspeakable things, like become British. Now, this does make me ask a question: why he bothered to use a fake story in the first place if he had unbreakable mind control? But, whatever, I guess. Anyway, there are hints throughout the game that lead you to question Atlas's motives, such as him not slurring his words while drunk on Guinness, and a giant board with "Would you kindly" written on it with every character and line drawn to them on top of an audio log using that same phrase to command a child, aka you, to do something he doesn't want to do. Now, little boy, put the beans on the toast. Sadly, this was a bit too subtle for me, and I missed it on my first playthrough. Frank sends you to deal with Andrew Ryan. Surprisingly, you both bond pretty quickly upon meeting, to which he then feels bad for what's happened to you and attempts some father and son bonding over golf. Sadly, our character's a bit confused on the rules and accidentally beats him to death. Now with the defeat of the main antagonist of the game, it ends beautifully, forcefully making you turn over the city to Fontaine in a surprising message from a video game, to show the consequences of blindly following orders, which has ultimately led you to defeating yourself. Nicely rounding off the game in an, oh, the game's not over. Okay, right. Fontaine backstabbed you for some reason, but you managed to escape and have the most basic of the mind control wiped from your head, and are swapped in the 90th minute to Frank Fontaine being your nemesis. In all honesty, it gets pretty dull from here. You chase him, you become a big daddy to attract a little girl. You then perform a standard escort mission where you walk faster than the person you're escorting. Don't worry, if they annoy you, you can just let them die and bring out a new one. Once completed, you fight Frankie Boy, and yeah, it's a boss fight. A few stages, you stab him, he gets mad, calls support, rinse and repeat, but the ending, my dear viewer, will captivate you. Because I lied. I didn't kill several children for 40 Atom extra. I instead saw them as any decent human would. As my potential child army in this third world shithole. As such, I unleashed them onto Frankie with a simple order to give them a standard British greeting. Bioshock has 2 distinct endings. Well, technically 3, but 2 of them are just the same, but don't worry. You don't kill children and live a happy life as a surrogate father and die surrounded by loved ones. Alternatively, you do kill children and nuke the world? I'm not sure. Seems like a bit of an escalation, but fair enough. If I was forced to pretend to be British most of my life, I'd probably do the same. Anyway, I give Bioshock a would you kindly out of is a man not entitled to beat his father to death with a golf club? And so, if you enjoyed the video, like and subscribe. If you did enjoy the video, feel free to like and subscribe anyway. The next review will be on Warhammer 40k 9th edition, so stay tuned of how I'm going to do that.